Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is just summarise in about 14 or 15 videos all the main areas from chapter 10, and then what you can do is you can use your notes to follow along as you watch the videos, and if you want to do any exercises associated with them, then that's fine as well. So first video is really just an introduction to what's meant by international relations. First of all, just in terms of what's required in the study design, these are sort of the key dot points that you need to be aware of. So what's meant by international economic relations, the benefits of trade, we'll look at all the things that make up the balance of payments, how to measure the exchange rate, all this stuff's in your checklist, so it's not, you should know what you need to be able to aware of. Demand and supply side factors that can affect the CAD, so things like how the terms of trade and the exchange rate and productivity and things like that affect the CAD. How do we measure and the consequences of Australia's foreign debt, and then finally trade liberalisation and some of the costs and benefits of trade liberalisation. This part here we sort of covered in our assignment, so we're not going to look at that for your exam. So first of all, international transactions. Basically, whenever you're thinking of international transactions, you're not just thinking of imports and exports. It does include the purchases of imports and the selling of exports, but it also includes any money flowing between Australia and overseas for the movement of finance or capital across borders as well. So what I mean by that is if Australia issues bonds, so for example, if we need money from overseas, then we might issue a bond. Any selling of equity, so if we were to allow multinational companies to set up in Australia, if we invest in shares abroad, or basically all the types of transactions that you're aware of that can belong in the current or the financial account. Basically this chapter is all about trade liberalisation and about trade between countries and how we record that trade. So whenever you hear that term trade liberalisation, it is that process of moving towards freer trade, which involves removing tariffs and subsidies and quotas and other restrictions on trade between two countries. So what are some of the benefits from our living standards? So the first thing to be aware of is you need to be aware of what are some of the benefits that Australia receives from engaging with transactions with people overseas or countries overseas. And some of the more obvious ones is that first it gives us access to a wider range of goods and services. By being able to import, we get access to products from overseas, and therefore we get access to a greater variety of goods and services. Often these products will also be cheaper, and there's two main reasons why they're cheaper. The first being that there's more competition on domestic producers, so therefore they have to keep their prices down. So there's a real effort from local producers to remain competitive by keeping their prices low and becoming more productive. But also the fact that imports themselves are cheaper, so therefore it allows businesses to get access to capital and to things to imports used in the production process at a much cheaper price. Other benefits of free trade, it gives us access to foreign labour, so it allows us to expand our labour force through immigration. It gives us access to foreign capital and technology, so we can use that technology to improve our productivity. One of the main benefits for Australia is it gives us access to foreign capital and funds. So it gives us access to debt, we can borrow from other countries to expand, or we can get access to foreign equity, which basically means through allowing foreign companies to have a stake in our businesses, we can use that money to grow as well. Other benefits of free trade, exports help to contribute to aggregate demand, so it helps to boost national incomes because we're generating money from our high level of exports, and that creates jobs. And the final thing is that it allows us to specialise in areas of comparative advantage, and we'll talk about what that means in the next video. But by specialising in essentially what we're good at, we are able to benefit from economies of scale and benefit from being more efficient. Final thing in this video, when you hear the word capital flows, basically when you hear that word, we're talking about transactions in the financial account. So if I use the term capital inflow or capital outflow, we're not talking about anything that belongs in the current account. We're talking about money that's used that we have to pay back or that we've lent to other countries for equity or debt financing. So it's generally used as a way for us to expand our productive capacity because we use that money to grow and purchase houses and build infrastructure and so on and so forth. But it's important to recognise that capital inflows and outflows belong in the financial account. So some examples of capital inflows and outflows. Capital inflows, funds entering the country in the form of either debt or equity. So when Australia borrows money, when the government issues bonds, When private companies borrow money, that's a form of capital inflow. It's often a case when interest rates are high in Australia, we'll borrow from overseas, so that can cause more capital inflow. Again, it's recorded in the financial account as credits. So it's basically all the stuff in the financial account. When we look at that in more detail, capital inflow is all the credits in the financial account. So it might be overseas citizens buying shares in Australia, overseas citizens investing in our super funds, foreign companies opening up stores in Australia, and therefore capital outflow is the opposite. Funds leaving the country. So it may be that we are lending money to other countries, or it may be that Australians are investing overseas or setting up businesses overseas or putting their super in overseas companies, BHP expanding and going overseas. All of that is an example of capital outflow. So whenever you hear those terms, capital inflow and capital outflow, we're talking about transactions in the financial account associated with debt and equity. Thank you.